Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by NBA futures analyst Brandon Anderson for this, your Pacers-Knicks Eastern Conference semifinals series preview. We've got best bet on this series. We'll break down all the X's and O's, the matchups, how to bet it, all the ins and outs of the series. For more on this, you should check out the Action Network app because Brandon's got a full article up detailing all the stuff he'll talk about today for you to go over and pour over and look at some props angles and various things. You can check out all my coverage on there as well. You should also go to youtube.com/the Action Network. I think on Wednesday night, we're doing Buckets Live again. So make sure to be on the lookout for that because we only got one game that night. So we'll have a Buckets Live on Wednesday and on Sunday this week. Make sure to be on the lookout for that. We have Action Island on Monday. We have Nothing But Bet on Tuesday. I think there's another Action Island on Wednesday. So we have all sorts of live shows for you this week, giving you picks, getting the guys, all the various contributors, Jay Money, Sean Little, Chris Raybon, lots of great folks with sharp angles. Make sure to check those out on youtube.com/the Action Network. All right. This is your Pacers-Knicks series preview. Knicks minus 250, Pacers plus 200. Not that much of a hold straddle for the books on this one as much as some of the other ones. At BetMGM, on the spread, Knicks minus 1.5, so the winner 6 or fewer is minus 140. Indy plus 1.5, so to get it to game 7 is plus, or win outright, is plus 115, which this is obnoxious. Like, I understand that a lot of this is based off of the hold on futures angles because I'm sure that the Knicks have like a way larger future hold than the Pacers. But I just am finding it very difficult this playoff season. These lines are sharper than I can remember in the last 5 years, and it's been really obnoxious where it's like, what's the angle? Well, the Knicks are definitely going to win. Oh, okay. So can I get like a pretty good price on the Pacers to just be able to hang in this series? Like, what if I think the Pacers can like actually hang? Well, if you think that they'll win 2 games out of 6, it's minus 190. What is that? What is that? So I hate how this market is priced, Brandon Anderson.
Yeah, I do too. I came into this series, did the work, and I reached a conclusion pretty confidently. Easily my most confident, well, I was gonna say most confident of this round, but I'm not counting the Boston series as of this round. Of the series that could be series, I feel very confident about backing the Knicks here, but it's really hard to find the avenue to do so as a better. As like, okay, how do I feel good about this read. I like it. I feel good about the Knicks. I like the matchup. I like the better team here. How do I bet it in a way that is still responsible and profitable? Like, just because you think a thing is likely to happen doesn't mean you should bet it. That's the whole game that we're doing. So you're right. Like, books have very much tried, I think, to kind of price this away for us, which, that's the job. That's the game that we are playing. So yeah, I'm excited. As Look, I turned 40 last summer. I am prime age for Knicks Pacers.
Yes.
Like, this is what we grew up on. This is Reggie Miller and the Spike Lee choke. This is the LJ. We literally got the LJ last week. This is Reggie scoring 8 in like 30 seconds. We literally got that last week in the Knicks series also. So I feel a lot of nostalgia here as a Bulls fan that grew up in the 90s watching these two teams basically duke it out to get blasted in the Eastern Conference Finals, and now we get to do it again.
All right, I want you to give your best bet, and there's a question I want to get to right off the top, and then we can kind of dive into your angle on it. What's your best bet for this series?
Yeah, so I settled on not going with a 7-game Knicks, not a sweep. So I'm going to split my bet into give me Knicks in 5 or Knicks in 6. In 5 is plus 310. Knicks in 6 is plus 470. So combined, that is a plus 138 angle. And as usual, cutting off a few of my outs, trying to find an angle that I feel profitable on. So Knicks in a medium length outcome series is my best bet.
Okay, I've had best bets for almost all the series previews that we've done. I haven't taken one off. I haven't called in and been like, nope for me. This is my nope. This will be the only series that I don't have a bet on. I don't have one on the series. This is a nope. There's a couple things. Last year, I thought the Knicks would lose to the Cavs. Bet the Cavs, was very confident. Knicks won that series. Turned around, reversed my position, was like, the Knicks are going to do it versus the Heat. They did not do it versus the Heat. Brandon tried to warn me off of it. So now I thought that I thought the Knicks were going to lose to the Sixers. They did not. So now I'm in the same position where either I have to reverse my position entirely, which is not true. Like, I like this Knicks team better than last year's for a number of obvious reasons. Like, I like this Knicks team. I just feel like this is getting extremely badly priced. And I continue to feel that the biggest thing is that I am like the only person on the planet who does not think the Pacers are garbage. Like, everyone else is literally just like, oh no, they went 6 games when Dame and Giannis were out, so they're terrible. And I'm like, you take out key players in a matchup when you like the matchup, and it's gonna fuck with things. Like, the Bucks were at home in a must-win desperation spot when you didn't have Damian Lillard to pick on in pick and roll. That was like a big part of my series cap, was you get to pick on Damian Lillard and pick and roll. So, like, I watch these teams all year and I see them continuously fuck up whenever a key guy is missing. And then we get to the playoffs and it's like, oh, you lost to them without this, so you're terrible. And I'm like, that's not how this works. It's like, well, if Giannis had played, that's not how this works. We don't know how that would have worked out. Well, if Giannis had played, they would have won easily. Why do you think that? The Pacers kicked the shit out of this team all year, Giannis or not. And my whole Pacers win profile is, this team's really good when they face good teams. When they face mediocre teams, they're really messy because they're not consistent. Like, that was their first playoff series. It was Tyrese Haliburton's first playoff series. It was Andrew Nembhard's first playoff series in this role. It was Nesmith's first playoff series as a major contributor. Like, all of these guys, first time. And yet, for some reason, everybody's just like, well, they're garbage. And I'm like, I don't think they are. I think this team's actually really good. So, like, I look at this matchup, and there's a lot of things I like. But the market and everyone I work with thinks the Knicks are just going to smash the hell out of them.
To be fair, everyone you work with, other than the two of us, are Knicks fans. So they are supposed to think that.
So, and I'm just beaten down where I'm like, I don't want to fade the Knicks and look stupid and lose money. And I don't want to bet on the Knicks because I think this is extremely horribly priced. My question for you is this. Talk to me about the coaching matchup, because I got my own thoughts. I'm big on coaching, but I'm very curious about your thoughts on this coaching matchup.
Yeah, this for me, obviously, like, you know what I think about Tibbs. We all think similarly about Tibbs, and I have long been a huge fan of Rick Carlisle. I think at this point we kind of have to just agree that Eric Spoelstra is the number one coach. For a long time, I would have contended it was Rick Carlisle. I would have put him ahead of Pop, even during all the Pop stuff. Like, I just thought he was at the top of the list. I think he does a great job of maximizing role players. Like, look, Indiana's been a team you and I have talked about since July? Like, this was the first team that you and I both were on backing all the way. This was a team you and I both bet heavily in the first round. I bet the escalator. We both were in on Pacers, and Carlisle is a very good coach. I don't really feel like Carlisle did a great job coaching in the first round per se. I don't know, they did a terrible job. They won the series, but to me, it's not great if you are facing Doc Rivers, top 15 all-time head coach Doc Rivers, but like, who has a lot of flaws that we know because we've seen him coach a lot. I felt like he kind of got out-coached by Doc in some ways. He certainly did not out-coach Doc as I would have expected him to. That's part of my cap on that series. So yeah, I'm trying to pull up some of my trends here. I don't love it. Like, as the person that is backing the Knicks here, I had in our rundown, what are some of your big questions in the series? And for me, the coaching thing is one of the big questions, because look, last year when we got to this round and the Knicks series you're talking about, when it was Knicks Heat, we did the whole thing. We did the whole podcast, and I like the Knicks, or you like the Knicks, I like the Heat, and we went back and forth. And I pulled up my trump card at the end. I was like, you're not going to want to do this. You're not going to want to bet it, because I got Eric Spoelstra and you got Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah.
And I feel like you are correctly preempting the conversation this year by being like, can we just stop this right now? Because are you really, really going to do the Tom Thibodeau thing? And I don't feel like Rick Carlisle has quite gotten to that level recently. And I also don't necessarily feel like you do a good job of framing, like, look, coaches can't make up solutions. Coaches can't magically make things happen on the court. The guys on the court still have to do the thing. And I think that's a little bit of it too, is that I don't see a ton of possible solutions for the Pacers to the problems that I think the Knicks are going to pose for them. And that doesn't mean that Rick Carlisle can't. Rick Carlisle is a much better NBA coach than me, I'm pretty sure. So maybe he will come up with those answers. I'm still looking for my numbers here. I'm gonna let you respond to that, and then I'll give you a couple of coaching numbers once I grab them here.
Yeah, so I don't think Carlisle did well in the first round. But I also don't know. A lot of it was because like I just look at that series so differently based off of my experience covering teams. And like it's entirely okay to just be like you're overthinking this. Like that's the easiest critique of me to find, and it's not wrong. It's just easy. If you're missing Giannis and you're missing Dame, or if you're missing Giannis, you get to be more creative. Like one of the things I said immediately, I said this on I think Nothing But Bet. I was like, Bobby Portis is going to have a huge series, and then Bobby was like incredible in game one and at various spots. And if he doesn't get kicked out, maybe the series goes to 7. That's because like that's a good matchup for him. Like it's all athletic forwards and not like pure size, and it's not like dynamic. You're not facing Donovan Mitchell. You're facing Tyrese Haliburton, which is a very different type of player. And so like, and when Dame was out specifically, I was like, oh, they get to play Malik Beasley. That's actually really good for them because Malik's not good, but he's long. He's just taller, and that's what you want. Is you just want bodies. I don't know that Carlisle had a lot of X's and O's to go to. Like there weren't a lot of like different things that he could run to. In part because they're like people forget like they're without Bennedict Mathurin. Like they're without a legit 20-point scorer off the bench, and if he plays heavy minutes. They didn't have like a lot of the big thing on the Pacers was what they do, their base level stuff was really effective versus the Bucks base level stuff. And I didn't think Doc would adjust. And Doc, to his credit, actually pulled out some cards. Like Doc got creative in part because he could, because he didn't have his guys. And you're like, so it's a good thing he was without Giannis and Dame? And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. And like Giannis obviously makes a difference, but it changes the dynamic of the matchup.
Yeah.
Of like how those levers get pulled. And so I don't necessarily know that Carlisle was all that bad in this. Now, the counter might be here is that he doesn't have a lot of levers to pull versus the Knicks. There's no lever you can pull where it's like, oh, suddenly the offensive rebounding isn't a problem.
And
like, no,
we can rebound. Ta-da!
Yeah. No, they're gonna kill him. They're gonna and like this is a big part of it, Brandon, is I just continue to be baffled by the notion that a team can just win a playoff series with offensive rebounding. I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense.
I think that is unfairly oversimplified, but I understand your frustration with it.
Well, no, it's like, I mean, if you look at the Sixers Knicks series was decided by a point. By point. And again, I've watched all of these offensive rebounds, and it's not like heart, hustle, and grit. That's a lot of it. That's like 90% of it. But a solid 10% was just like, why did the ball directly fall in the lap of this player standing there? Is that going to happen? And I guess it just is. Now, look, if you actually want to know like the biggest reason like why the Knicks win, it's because Jalen Brunson's a fucking killer. Like he's just a killer. He's amazing. He is unbelievable. And he's the best player in the series by a fairly wide margin in terms of playoff basketball because Tyrese Haliburton has not figured it out yet. Like didn't figure it out versus the Knicks or versus the Bucks, you know? And that's one thing that I would be hopeful for is like, if you're a Pacers better, do I think there's a world where it's like, oh, Tyrese Haliburton looks like Tyrese Haliburton again? Yeah. Like, I think there's a world where that happens. I will also say this, like, I don't look at the Knicks as like this fearsome, awesome defense. And I don't know why anybody thinks
before we get into the Brunson Haliburton and the Knicks defense, I want to do the Carlisle thing here. I got the numbers before we get too far past that. So I want to make a distinction on how I'm seeing the series versus how I might be looking game to game. So game to game numbers, here are some of the trends that really scared me when I first started looking at this, scared me as a possible Knicks better. Most profitable coach in our Bet Lab system as a road underdog in the playoffs. Not just active coaches, any coaches since I believe 2005 that our system tracks, Rick Carlisle. The most profitable playoff road underdog. Gonna get possibly 4 chances to be that. He's gonna be that in game 1, 2, and 5 for sure here. Then you flip it. Okay, how about the other side? I'm looking for what coaches do I want to fade when they are the seed favorite. So not necessarily favored in a game, but when you are the team with the better regular season record, effectively, Tom Thibodeau is the second most profitable coach to fade as a seed favorite. Those seem like two really troubling trends to marry together if you want to be a Knicks better here. If you want to say, okay, I'm just going to trust in Rick Carlisle to figure some stuff out, those two trends are very strong for you. However, the Tibbs stuff, I dug into it a little bit. Almost entirely the profits you're getting by fading Tibbs as the seed favorite, almost all of those have come when he is the seed favorite by 1. And if you look back time and time again, 3 times Tibbs lost as a seed favorite to LeBron. I can pretty much forgive that. Like, I can handle Tibbs, the team that overachieves in the regular season. We know this. This is what you do. You play defense, you overachieve, and we know that LeBron underachieves in the regular season because it's not what he's playing for. He's going to just like make sure you get to the playoffs and take care of business there. It's happened to a few other guys. I don't need to hold it against Tibbs that his team has, quote, choked by losing as the 1 seed to a 2 seed LeBron or a 2 seed to a 3 seed LeBron. That's most of the trend here. If you take that out, then really it's not a lot of other stuff happening there. So I think I will be more cautious betting game to game, especially, look, we just saw the Knicks win a bunch of by the seat of their pants games, or games where they fell behind in the starter minutes and then like clawed out some victory. I would listen to a case that the Sixers were the better team all 6 games last round.
Yeah.
I could hear a case that says the Sixers could have won that series 6-0. I don't know if that's right, but I would listen. Like that's not outlandish. That's not a great sign for the team that I think is clearly better here. I don't know that the Knicks are a team I want to bet laying 6-7 points like we're looking at in the opener here. They're a team that might screw around and suddenly, win by a bucket at the end. As a series better, I don't need spreads. I just need to win my 4 games. And I feel like that's where I can trust Tibbs against Carlisle big picture. So that's my big answer to the coaching question. A few of the other big questions that I have that we don't need to necessarily answer right now, but things I'm watching for, things that I think I have a read on, but could change my perception of the series if I don't have the read right. I think who controls the pace is really important here. The Knicks were the slowest pace in the NBA. The Pacers, true to their name, were second in pace. They want to play fast. They want to run. They want to get in transition. They want to play fast, fun basketball offense. And the Knicks are like, nope, the opposite of that, please. In the regular season, I have a few friends. Look, the Pacers are the local team-ish around here other than the Bulls. Pacers fans are confident. Pacers fans feel good about this matchup. Pacers fans say, we sped up the Knicks. We made them uncomfortable in the regular season. You absolutely did. You also absolutely didn't have to play OG Anunoby any of the matchups or Mitchell Robinson any of the matchups. So I can't take a lot out of the season matchups here. So who controls the pace? I think the Knicks do. I think it's much easier to slow a team down and play and get them into the muck, especially in the playoffs, especially with this whistle, than it is to speed up a team. I think if Indiana wants to do well, they need to play their pace, especially at home. That's going to be big. How bad is Haliburton's back? We don't have an answer for that. I think it's not great. I don't think Haliburton played well at all in the first series. How big of an advantage is Indiana's bench and their depth? I think that is a really pivotal question that I'll come back to. And then the one other thing, we talked about this in the last round, both of these teams had kind of a makeover for better and for worse. The Knicks defense had this big makeover after the Anunoby trade. Starting January 1, their top 5 defense, incredible looking defense. Is that real? or how much of that was fake, because it was a pretty small sample, and it wasn't honestly that great in the first round against the Sixers. The Pacers, number one offense or near the top for a while, then very mid for 2 months while Haliburton was injured. Then, as you and I have both brought up in a lot of places, really good again for like 3 weeks at the end of the year, but really good for the 3 weeks when nobody really tries at the end of the year in a small sample. Was that real? Which one of those small samples stats do I feel better about? I basically come down to feeling like I have a Knicks answer on those questions. If you like the Pacers, I think those are some of the key points that we should have to disagree on to want to go Indiana here. So do you have a thought on any of those questions in particular before we dig into each side of the ball at all?
Yeah, I have a couple. The stat that keeps rattling around in my brain, and I found this today, and I do think it's relevant, is it includes the Boston Celtics, and the Pacers are not the Celtics. But the New York Knicks were 8-17 versus top 10 offenses this year. 8-17 with the 24th best defense. Okay. But what about after they added all of the guys that they added? Okay. OG was out for long stretches of this, so I don't know how much you want to make it meaningful. But they were 3-6 after the All-Star break versus teams top 10 in offense. 3-6 with the 25th ranked defense. A very good way to kind of classify this is essentially that the Knicks are really good versus balanced teams. The Knicks are very good versus teams where they can get an edge on you, which tracks because they play harder and their starters more. I don't think the Knicks are tryhards. I want to be very clear on this. Like, they have a physicality and an edge that's very real. They're also tryhards. Like, that's what they are, is like regular season. Like, they're just going to try harder than you. Like, that's their MO. So they're going to try harder than you. And if you face a team that actually has the firepower, they got shredded. They got ripped to shreds. Now, you could say in the playoffs and in this matchup that the Pacers don't actually have any firepower. I think that's weird considering this was the number 2 offense in the NBA. I think that's odd, but I'm okay if you're just like name brand value. I have a hard time with this where it's like, well, they don't have the guys. The Knicks have Josh Hart. Like, Brunson's the best player in the series, but it's like they have Josh Hart and Hartenstein and OG and Anunoby. And I'm like, okay, like, those are good players. But like the Pacers have Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner. Really good. And they have like a lot of guys who are really good offensively. The pace thing, this is an interesting one because this is like where the Knicks, it's an interesting question. If the Knicks can wear them down and take their will to live with physicality, then they'll slow down and the Knicks will win the series. The Pacers have been extremely disciplined this season with not being affected by those things. Like, they are not a team that's like, well, you can get them out of their like, no, like, they do what they do. Like, they're gonna run, they're gonna push, they're gonna play this way. And like, I didn't necessarily find that the Bucks did all that much to like slow them down. And what's crazy, Brandon, like, this is like a fairly crazy thing too, is that when we look at the actual playoff numbers, like, I was like pretty like surprised when I looked at this, where it's like, okay, so like the Knicks, like tough, rough and tumble, gonna physical them up. Yeah, they have the 8th best playoff defense. 8th. The Pacers have the 2nd best playoff offense. 121.7. They still cooked. Oh, but they didn't have Giannis. Okay, but the point here is like physicality didn't slow Indiana down. That didn't happen. Pacers also had the 6th best defense. Oh, well, they didn't face Giannis and Dame. Fair. Totally fair. Absolutely. But like, the perception is like Pacers defense is garbage. And I'm like, the Pacers early season defense was garbage. The Bucks were actually like a pretty well-oiled unit in terms of how they executed, and Chris Middleton's a badass. So like, is it Giannis and Dame? No. But I am just a little bit confused by the perception that the Knicks were this dominant defense when in reality the Sixers shredded them and some weird shit happened, and that the Pacers were garbage, and in reality the Pacers did pretty well. Like that's what happened. Like that's on paper. That's what happened on paper, which is very important to you. That's what happened, right?
I don't think so. Here's what I would say.
Second best offense, sixth best defense in Indiana.
Okay, I don't think those numbers are meaningful in any way. After one series, you can't compare second, eighth, sixth, whatever, when you are comparing to I've played one team for the entire sample of a data set.
No, but
That's
my
not
point
a
here is,
meaningful data set
but
here
but but my
because
point, but my point here is that
let me finish the point. The Sixers clearly, by a clear margin in the East at least, were by far the best team that lost in the first round.
with a
And
with a
in the whole playoffs, they should be that too, unless you think it's the Lakers. It's one of those two. Just let me finish the thought. I think personally, based on what we saw in the first round, if I personally had to re-rank the first round opponents 1 to 8 by based on what we saw and who was the quality of the team, I think the Milwaukee Bucks to me were pretty clearly the number 8 team in the East. So I am looking at Indiana as a team that faced the version of the Bucks with no Giannis and with half of Dame and completely laid an egg in game 1, didn't come out with any energy or playoff effort at all, and got run out in a series where they were supposed to come in and make a statement game 1, then did the exact same thing again in game 5 when Dame went out also. And look, I know in the regular season, that's a normal letdown spot. Those were spots to bet Milwaukee. I agree with that. This is not the regular season. You can't completely lay an egg and no show against ostensibly the worst team in the playoffs that you kind of survived to get by in 6 games. Now, I don't think that that means the Pacers are garbage. I don't think you're hearing people actually say that. I'm not saying that. And the Pacers are talented. But I think that it is problematic that they didn't do well in that series. And I totally disagree with you that Milwaukee did not slow them down or affect the physicality. I thought Milwaukee completely made them play an uncomfortable version of themselves game 3 forward, basically. I thought Indiana took way too many threes than they want to. They did not play Pacers basketball. And I think that they, quite frankly, are very lucky to have made that second half spurt in game 6 and come through, or I think that they're home right now. So I have a very different interpretation of that Indiana first round series than you.
Okay. I think that the game 1 was not like I didn't bet Pacers game 1 because I was like, I don't know, man. This is first time playoffs for this group. That's
Yeah,
not a
that was a good read. It's a good read by you.
that's not a good environment.
I do have a little bit of, you and I were on Buckets live on a Sunday, as like by the time we stopped recording and I went and turned the game on, it was like Bucks by 700.
Yeah.
Good job with your Pacers escalator. How's that going? So I think have a little bit of like aftershock of like, well, that wasn't a fun way to start.
Yeah, and the idea is like they should have beaten the Bucks in 5. And the biggest thing I will just say is like if that game is in Indiana, like because you would admit that the Bucks, you're like the Bucks were the 8th best team, right? Okay, so I want to do a thought exercise with me.
Okay.
If the Bucks were actually the 8th seed, and theoretically, I don't know how this would work, but they were facing the 6th seed, the Pacers, right, in a series.
Yeah.
The Pacers would have home court. And when they had a closeout opportunity at home, what happened? They won by double digits. Like that to me is like
eventually. It took them some time in that game too.
Sure. And that's like how that's kind of how I look at it. The other thing is the other thing this is what I don't really know. I don't know how to judge that Sixers team. And it's really obnoxious that Joel got hurt and we didn't get to see, like, I had Sixers futures. I have Knicks futures too, but I had Sixers futures, right? And would have liked to have seen the Sixers at full power because I don't even know how to judge New York because everybody's like, oh, that's really impressive that the Knicks beat the Sixers with Joel Embiid. And I'm kind of like, one, did they? Or did some weird shit happen? Like Miles McBride was plus 37 in game 1, and then whatever the fuck happened in game 2. Like I get the Tyrese Maxey thing. I get that. I understand the Tyrese Maxey thing. Totally get that. But I just am not. I'm not 100. I guess the biggest thing is I'm not 100% convinced that the Knicks beat the allegations in round 1. And I'm not sure that the Pacers didn't. And that's really
Okay.
the divide here, I think, is, and
Yeah.
you said like the Pacers are garbage. It's like Seth Partnow thinks they're garbage. And like
Okay.
a bunch of other people that,
I will welcome his opinion as one that is valid then.
yeah, and like there's a bunch of people that I think that just are just like, oh, this Pacers team is not any good. And I think a lot of it is just like, I am very sensitive to the shifts in what happens when a matchup suddenly changes with injury, and how
Yeah.
often we're like, oh, they're gonna kill him because this guy's out, and then it doesn't happen. And like I've noted that over and over and over again, and everyone still continues to be like, well, that's weird. Oh well, moves on. And then the next time it's like, oh, they're without this player. They should kill him. And it's like, no, that's not how this works.
Yeah. Agreed.
Um, on offense, you're talking about this. What is like the four factors look when the Pacers are on offense for this team?
Yeah, so I think this is the key matchup for me and for everyone. Obviously, Indiana's offense, New York's defense. So Indiana's an elite 2 points team. They want to get the twos. This is where it's like, okay, New York for the bulk of the season was not great at that, but from OG Anunoby forward, since January 1st, which is not a tiny sample, they're number 4 in EFG defense. So which one of those is real, and I guess not even real, which one is current, I think is the correct question. And I think too, I would say to a point that you've made a couple times, I think that you are struggling perhaps with the perception that the Pacers are garbage currently, which is, again, I think overstated, is not the same as saying the Pacers 2023-24 have been garbage. They clearly were not early in the season. I don't think Seth Partnow or others would say that they were earlier in the season. I think right now, Tyrese Haliburton is what makes their profile what it is. He is why they are so elite at twos. I talked about that with the Nuggets, with Nikola Jokic. He is creating all these easy looks, and what the Pacers do is creating those easy looks. But right now, I don't think Tyrese Haliburton is Tyrese Haliburton. He did not look himself. He cannot create an advantage right now. Now, I don't know if that is because he's not that dude in the playoffs. I don't know. It's possible. We saw it in the in-season tournament against the Lakers when they really, really had a game plan and showed up for the game. Haliburton, I had an MVP ticket. I was watching. It went very poorly. They had a plan for him. He could not have the athleticism to create an advantage. They didn't have other answers. I think that's part of why they went and got Pascal Siakam to give them some more creation. But Haliburton, whether it is he just isn't that dude, or whether it is he's not healthy right now, I lean much more toward the latter. Whatever the reason is, he's not him. And I think the Pacers offense is not the Pacers offense. Another reason where things don't quite match the profile and the numbers, their spacing is compromised. They got rid of Buddy at the deadline. They lost Benedict Mathurin. That was their Buddy replacement. They just don't quite have the same shooting and spacing. And that has mattered against the Bucks. The Bucks kind of tricked them in, I think, to shooting a bunch of threes at times. And a couple games went really well because Miles Turner was like, hey, I made 7 of 10 tonight. If that happens this series a few times, then it will go a different direction than I think. I don't know that is a
Can I
sustainable
ask a
thing.
question? Why do people think that
Sure.
Miles Turner can't shoot?
I did not say that. Do you think Miles Turner is a 70% on 10 attempts per game shooter?
Am I surprised that Miles Turner can hit wide open pick and pop threes? Not at all.
That's not the same question. If I told you a player who is a decent 3-point shooter was going to increase his volume by double and make 70% of them multiple times in a game, should that not change your perception of what would happen in a series? Is that not an outlier performance?
Not anymore, just because I had to live through Fred VanVleet. This stuff happens. I lived through Miles McBride shooting like what, 5 of 7 in one game? Like that stuff happens. Like, is Miles Turner? Do I think Miles Turner is a more meaningful impact player than Miles McBride? Yes, I do.
Okay, I agree. I agree.
Keep going.
Okay, so here's the biggest reason I'm skeptical about Indiana's offense, specifically in this matchup. So this is moving away from the 4-factor thing. Indiana ranks top 7 in the NBA in all 4 of these kind of miscellaneous categories, as NBA.com calls them. Now, granted, Indiana scores a lot. So these are not a like per 100 metric. These are just points. But they are top 7 in points off of turnovers. They're top 7 in second chance points. They're top 7 in fast break points. And they're top 7 in points in the paint. You want to be high in those metrics. Those are the easiest, most efficient ways of scoring. Those are your twos. You're getting easy putbacks. You're getting transition buckets. You're scoring in the restricted area. You're getting off of live ball steals. I don't need to explain to you why those are the easiest, best looks rather than a Jalen Brunson mid-range jumper. Those are the easy looks. That's what Indiana's top 7 at, all 4 categories. The Knicks defense is top 7 at all 4 categories. So I think that in this matchup, the Knicks are built specifically to not let you get the easy stuff. They're not going to turn over a lot. That's a thing Brunson's good at, taking care of the ball. They're not going to give you second chance. They're going to get crushed on the board. They're not going to give you a lot of easy transition. They try hard, even if they're not a try hard team. They get back. The Bucks, to their credit, I thought did a good job of not letting Indiana get the easy stuff they like. I think really Indiana's formula strikes me as we've seen a lot of this is a regular season team based on defense. You broke the formula, you found this great defense, but was it really that great? Because now we're in the playoffs and it didn't really translate. My theory is a little bit that Indiana might have built an offense that did that. They found a way to break the cheat code and speed up the pace and find all these answers. But now here's what happened. We got to the playoffs, and here's what I'm seeing. I saw the Lakers in the in-season tournament in the finals, and now I saw the Bucks. The Lakers were a play-in team. The version of the Bucks the Pacers played were a play-in team at best. Both of those teams, average NBA teams, completely got Indiana out of their flow, completely took those easy Indiana looks away and turned the game into a half-court game. And Indiana is not a great half-court team. They're still good. They're not bad. They are not getting all the easy stuff, the stuff that made them the number 1 offense. So the stat you gave about the Knicks against top 10 offenses, I don't feel fazed by that because the Pacers are not a top 10 offense right now. The way that Haliburton is playing and the way that they will be in this matchup, this is not a top 10 offense, not a top 10 in the NBA offense. So to me, that's the key takeaway is I think the Knicks physicality and the Knicks defense is going to make the Pacers not be what they are at their best. And quite frankly, I think because of Haliburton's health and the way that he's playing right now, they're already not at their best. So to me, that's the key thing in the whole matchup. The whole thing on the whole series read on the podcast, that's it for me, is that I can't get past that. And I think the Knicks slow it down. I think they get Indiana off Indiana ball, and then they're just the better team from there.
Okay. The Indiana Pacers this season were the 3rd best half-court offense in the NBA. They were the number 2 pick-and-roll offense, including passes. The New York Knicks were the 18th ranked team defensively, defending pick-and-rolls, including passes. In the playoffs, the Indiana Pacers are 4th in half-court offense behind the Celtics, the Wolves, and the Milwaukee Bucks, by the way, because the Pacers defense really is that bad. In half-court situations, I think the edges is where they can be okay. The Knicks are 12th currently in overall half-court offense. And if we look at in the playoffs, the Knicks are 11th amongst playoffs teams in half-court defense. And if you go like, okay, but the small sample thing, all right, fair enough. The Knicks were 10th in half-court defense. Good, not elite. Like that's the thing is like,
Sure.
They're not an elite defense. They're not. I don't know how. There's no way to make an argument the Knicks are an elite defense. I don't know. And like, I guess this is the kind of the thing is like, you're like Haliburton doesn't look right, and they're not a top 10 offense. And I'm like, but every single number says that they're still. Even when Hallie was hurt, they were still chugging along as a top 10 offense because of how the offense is built and how many weapons
they weren't though. They weren't. If you look at like the 2 months while Hallie was hurt and while his numbers were compromised, the Pacers were like the 12th to 14th offense in most of the metrics.
From January 1st, which is when he started, that was really the month that he got hurt, was January. So January 1st through the end of the season, the Indiana Pacers, via cleaning the glass, were the 4th best half-court offense in the National Basketball Association.
I'm trying to find my number here. So here's what I have from, I don't remember why this is the dates that I chose, so I can't help you with this. But from January 8th to March 18th, the Pacers were 18 and 16 in that range. They were the number 11 offense, number 19 defense. So they were basically
to March. So
that was January 8th to March 18th. So they were a plus 4.1
I
net
just want to
outside of that range.
I just want to note that we're now doing the small sample. We're doing a smaller sample here after we're like, but the playoff, like we can admit that we're now slicing, right?
100%. Yeah,
Okay.
that was my question at the top is which small sample are we going to trust more of?
Hey, I got it. Via Clean the Glass from January 8th through March 18th, the Indiana Pacers were ninth in half court offense. They were a top 10 half
Yeah.
offense.
So
When
I had
Hallie
11th
was
in overall offensive rating. So,
when
again, I
Hallie
said
was
not bad,
when
just not great.
Not great. I mean, ninth, a top 10 is great. The elite's great. And that was when Hallie was
How many teams are still playing in this round?
and that was Boston, Oklahoma City from this sample, Boston, Oklahoma City, Dallas, the Clippers, and Indiana. All the teams that were top 10 in that range were all playoff teams. I get the point. Like I get how bad they looked. I get it. I think this is kind of thing is I'm just like we just kind of zeroed in on like Hallie struggling from the field for 2 months. And like I'm not surprised that he struggled versus the Bucks. And maybe he'll struggle because look, the Knicks are going to be better at 2-on ball than the Bucks were. Like they're gonna really physical. Like Josh Hart with Isaiah Hartenstein, they're gonna play so physical up front. But one of the things I think that's going to be really tough for them is that the Pacers can go 5 out, whereas the Sixers can't really do that with Embiid's mobility, and it changes some of the dynamics. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting. I don't. Again, like I can make all these arguments. This is why I can't bet it, but I also like I can do all this, and it's still and like the defensive side, which you can talk about, like I can say like, well, the Pacers actually were a pretty good defense in that matchup versus the Bucks, but it was versus the Bucks without Damon Giannis, and overall the numbers are basically like, no, the Pacers defense is terrible, and that's maybe just enough here to get them the win because Jalen Brunson may have like the biggest series in Knicks history after having the first beating his own record of the last round. So
yeah, Brunson scored in the season series 28, 40, and 39. He took almost 22 pointers a game. He got to the line 10 times a game. At books that have up his points per game for just the series, his points per game line is like 34.5 this round. Like it's an absurd number for a playoff series. I think he's going to get what he wants. I honestly, I don't think the Pacers defense is terrible. I think that having Siakam and now Nesmith and Nembhard in the lineup, I think that they are more slightly below average than terrible. Like I think that was the trade-off, but the trade-off is that they're not as good offensively and especially not as much spacing. To me, there's not a lot to say about Knicks on offense. The thing is what we already said. The Knicks are going to not be as efficient offensively, but going to literally get 15, 20, 25 more shots up in some of these games because they're going to murder Indiana on the glass. They had games in the season against them with 15 offensive rebounds and 25 offensive rebounds against the Pacers, and no Mitchell Robinson in either one of those games.
can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? Just because I think
it's to me, the Knicks offense is just a Brunson can do enough and they can get enough chances to get to get over the line when you get that many more shots up. What's your question?
So I say this all the time that the matchup's more important than the results. I do say that. I do just want to add, and like OG didn't play in any of these matchups. I want that made clear from the very start. Fine. If you want to hashtag Knicks tape it, if you're listening. What was the record in those games where the Knicks got all those offensive?
The Pacers won 2 of them because, as you pointed out, EFG is the most important. The Pacers shot literally 70 EFG in one of the games because, like, I believe the Pacers scored 140 in the first matchup, and it was when I think the Knicks had just traded for OG, but he was not in the lineup. It was right before New Year's, right before a lot of my numbers start tracking. And to me, I was like, oh, yep, that's why they did the trade, because they could not slow the pace down. Look, the Knicks literally were starting Taj Gibson in one of these games.
Yeah, they started Taj. Yeah, that I know.
It is a sample to be thrown out. When you look at the season series, there's not a lot to take away from it. So I realize I can't say that and then also say, but they got a lot of the rebounds, so we're taking that away. That's the matchup. The Pacers are a bottom 5 defensive rebounding team. The Knicks are number 1 offensive rebounding. This is offensively the thing we saw with the Cavs last time. We saw the Bucks get a lot of offensive rebounds against them in the first round. They're not even a team that gets that often. I want to talk about too. This kind of goes both ways. An interesting thing that I wanted to be hesitant with for Indiana or for the Knicks here, but ended up actually kind of flipping it. So a thing I liked about the Pacers last round, and especially I love to bet them at home last round, is that at home especially, they're going to have the big bench advantage where, role players play better at home. Obi Toppin's scoring was way up at home. He had a great game 6. He was, I think, 13, 15, and 21 or something at home versus like 10 points a game on the road. TJ McConnell has been a lot better at home. So in theory, the Knicks, here's this team that has no bench, nobody you can rely on, just their starters. And in theory, that should mean, oh, well, there's a big advantage. The Pacers have a big bench advantage. They can have former Knick, Obi Toppin, can come in and give a spark off the bench. They can have TJ McConnell come in. Here's the question, though. The whole point of a bench advantage is that my bench guys are better than your bench guys. And here we go. We're going to have an advantage now. Guess what? The Knicks don't play bad bench guys. They just play minutes 8 through 10 out of 48 more for Josh Hart and OG Anunoby and Jalen Brunson. So are we sure that McConnell and Obi Toppin are actually a bench advantage if actually they're still playing against the better Knicks starters? I think it's a bench disadvantage. I think Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell specifically might not be able to play a lot of minutes in this series because I don't think that they can handle up against those Knicks starters.
Disagree. Oh, so like all the Pacers lineups say that like McConnell and Toppin versus starters are good. And that carried through in the Buck series. Again, flawed stuff with Giannis, but like I don't look at Mitch McConnell and go like that's an 82 game player. Like TJ's a 16 gamer. Toppin, I don't see any reason why he can't play. Now, it might just be like Jalen's out there, so they lose the minutes. That might be it. Because again, I think Jalen's just going to be amazing in this series. And you're right that they're just going to play him to the bone. Like, this is a lot of it is like, can the Pacers finally wear out the Knicks? Like, that's like a big question here is like, can the Pacers, one of the fastest teams in the league, one of the most offensively minded teams in the league, can they just wear them out? Because they've been playing balls to the wall 44 minutes a night for months, for 3 months now. And like, what does that look like? And the answer is probably no. The Knicks are probably just like, no, we're tougher, we're stronger, and we're not gonna lose. And then they're gonna get to Boston and be like, oh no, we lost. I don't think it's a disadvantage. I just don't know if it's an advantage. Like that, I think is the best way to go about it. I don't think.
I started where you just said. I started with, man, the Pacers have all these guys. They're coming to waves, and the longer the series goes, the Pacers are going to wear them down. First of all, I have to laugh. It's late as we're recording this. You said Mitch McConnell is not an 82 game player. Mitch McConnell is not an 80 game player. TJ McConnell, I think, is an 82 game player. Mitch McConnell is not playing basketball these days. TJ McConnell in past playoffs, really other than the series we just watched, has not stayed on the court in the playoffs. I think he is absolutely an 82 game player, not a 16 game player. He is extremely a regular season play the bench offense dude that can't hold up in a physical, big, real NBA series. I totally disagree on that one. Toppin, I don't know. Toppin with the energy and some of the dunks and whatever. But like, he's the guy, he gets those points. All the things I said that they're top 7 at, like the transitions and the easy stuff, like that's Toppin's game. So if I'm right that the Knicks are taking some of those things away, now you just have a negative defender out there not really doing much but being athletic. So maybe he doesn't get played off the court, but yeah.
Is there a counter like answer to this a little bit that like, hey, they win all these matchups, they win all of these things, they do all of these things. But the Pacers are better at a baseline offensively and they'll do them too. Like that's one of my questions, because if you actually look at it, so this was like an interesting thing. Okay. We'll get to kind of wrap up your best bet here. So the Knicks were number one in second chance points per 100 possessions in the first round. No surprise. 21 points. Again, want to be really clear on this. The Knicks won the first round series because of 3 things. Jalen Brunson's a god, second chance points, Miles McBride. That's why they won. But one of the things that I noticed that was weird is the Sixers were actually 8th. Like they didn't not get second chance points, and they got a lot of offensive rebounds and didn't score as many. So it's not even necessarily that the Knicks are a great rebounding team. They're just a great offensive rebounding team, which makes me kind of wonder if the Pacers can put a little bit of that back. If it's like, well, they got athletes. What if they get putbacks? And so like, what if it's like 21 second chance points to 18 second chance points? Like, what does that look like? Yeah. Does that factor at all into the analysis?
I've considered it. I actually wonder about Isaiah Jackson getting a little bit of run in this series. Like, I think there's going to be a moment where Miles Turner gets in foul trouble at some point, and they're
Yeah.
going to have to try some other answers. I kind of don't mind for Indiana, Isaiah Jackson, like getting a little athleticism and punch at the 5. Like that's not Toby. Toby or Tobin can't play the 5. I don't know if Ijax is ready for a playoff series, but like he's or Jalen Smith, like somebody with some athleticism out there to maybe accidentally find some offense or rebounding and give them some chances. I consider that. Like I think that is a real possibility that maybe they can make up some of that ground there. How you said earlier that you feel Jalen Brunson is the best player in the series. I agree with that. Given right now, the version we're getting right now, where do you think Tyrese Haliburton ranks in the hierarchy of players in this series?
He's still second, and I think a lot of it is like if you go back and you really watch that Bucks series, like I think actually Holly played pretty well in a lot of spots in a lot of those games. Because the Bucks were like the Bucks game plan was anybody but Haliburton. We're throwing the kitchen sink at him. We're hedging, we're blitzing, we're sending naked doubles, the whole 9 yards. Like get the ball out of Haliburton's hand, make Andrew Nembhard beat you. And Andrew Nembhard was like, you're playing drop coverage 3 feet off me. I can make a mid. Yes, I can shoot Jose Alvarado. Or Miles Turner. Like we're just gonna leave Miles Turner wide open because we're putting 2 on ball. Miles Turner's gonna hit those threes. So I don't think that Hallie played well because I think he was game planned out, and great, truly elite players can't be game planned out. We saw that in the first round series with Jalen, where they did really well on him in the first 2 games, and then Brunson adapted and cooked them because he got used to the ice and he adapted. But I still think that he's the second best player by like a wide margin. I think the list is Brunson, a gap, Haliburton, Siakam, Miles McBride, maybe Pascal Siakam. No, I mean maybe Miles Turner, Hart, Nemhard.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's what I got. Like I think once you get pat like the best player in the series is what matters most, and that's what is Brunson by a wide margin, which is another reason why I can't bet the Pacers.
What about if you can answer it as best as you can do this with the time machine in your head? It's December 31st, not the upcoming one, but the one that just passed. It's mid-season, and we've now seen like 3 months of basketball. How would you have answered this question then? How would the gap between Brunson and Haliburton have been the same, bigger, smaller? Would it have been that order?
If you had asked me, what the gap is in the regular season, I would have said
Yeah.
no. If you asked me what does it look like in the playoffs, I would have said yes. Because I know Jalen can handle playoffs. He did it in that Utah series and versus the Suns. And then he went to New York and he did it versus the Cavs and he competed versus the Heat. Jalen Brunson is playoff certified. He was already playoff certified. People are just catching up to it. Tyrese has never been there. He's never been in a playoff series. Jalen's first playoff series was not good either because he never got to touch the ball, but that's another point for another time. So that to me is like kind of how this goes. Like I'm just not surprised that like Tyrese Haliburton is experiencing the same. And if you want proof of it, like Jamal Murray's having a bad playoffs right now because he's hurt. If you go back and you think about like Jamal Murray last year, Western Conference Finals, 30 points on 50, 40, 90, had a 30-point triple-double in the finals, right? Amazing, incredible playoff player. 2 50-point performances in a playoff series in the bubble. Jamal Murray's first playoff series versus the Spurs was a disaster. It was a disaster. It takes you time. You have to, nothing prepares you except going through it. You just have to go through it.
Well, and again, like he's dealing with a bad back. Like there are games and moments in games where you can just tell he can't even move. Like he can't get up and down the court. And if you look, we're in our 40s, Matt. Like we don't need to explain to us what it means to have a day with a bad back. When that's happening, like you're cooked. You can't let go. Play in a great NBA basketball game after that. It's something that affects everything. So I just want to clarify to Pacers fan listeners who are like, these guys hate Tyrese Haliburton. What happened to the Haliburton guys that no, we love Tyrese Haliburton. Like I as of December 31st, when I was definitely watching all the basketball games all the time, I probably would have had Tyrese Haliburton like top 5 on my MVP ballot.
Yeah,
he was playing incredible basketball.
Yep.
I think he is an all NBA caliber regular season player. I think he will be for many years to come. I think in the regular season, I would have had, before the injury at least, Haliburton ahead of Brunson. and possibly even a tier gap before Brunson is just not the version we're getting right now. So I just want to make sure listeners here, we're not hating on Haliburton. This is just right now the version he is with his health and the version in the playoffs.
I need you to give me a 90-second version of why you specifically like Knicks in 5 or 6 at plus 138 versus 4 or 7.
Yeah, so it's really Tibbs has never had a sweep ever before. Never. Not as the winner or the loser. I don't see this Knicks team is not good enough to sweep an opponent, I don't think. If it ever is going to happen, this might be it, but I'm willing to give that up. Tibbs also has only won one time in game 7. So I'm basically just punting on both those possibilities. We get to game 7, we've gone longer than I thought, and now I got it back. Tibbs in game 7 against Carla. I'm not loving that. And now I have Haliburton. Apparently has been better than I thought he was going to be. And that's possibly he's the best player in game 7. If we're that late, I've already misread the series. So I'm giving up game 7. I'm giving up the sweep because Tibbs teams don't do that. Tibbs teams basically, it just takes an extra game or two to get there sometimes. So Knicks in 5 or 6 plus 138. That's it. You heard the cap for the Knicks the whole rest of the podcast. That's why I chopped it down, trying to find some slight edge here because the numbers just suck for this series.
I will probably bet Pacers plus 2.5 after game 1 when I finally get a better number on it. I should be able to get like a decent number.
Do you agree that the Pacers are going to have in game 1 specifically a bit of a physicality shock going from playing the Bucks to playing the Knicks at least?
I don't know. I think it's just as possible that the Knicks are like, oh no, a team that doesn't have Tobias Harris. What are we gonna do? Like that seems like it might actually happen. Like, oh God, other guys are shooting. So like I'll just
but I mean, based on the cap that you just said, you are expecting the Knicks to win game 1, correct?
Yeah, I'm expecting the Knicks to win game 1 because they're the better team and they're at home and they're top 2 seeds at home are very good in these game 1s. Thanks, Denver. So we'll see how game 1 goes. I'll probably bet Pacers plus 2.5. Won't be a big bet for me. Brandon likes Knicks in 5 plus 310 and 6 plus 470 for a plus 138. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. My thanks to David Payne for putting this up on the podcast forum. Give us those 5-star reviews, please. You can check out the video version at youtube.com/theactionnetwork. My thanks to Hutton Jackson and the video crew. Get this up over there. We'll talk to you guys. As this will be up on Monday morning. We'll have another Best Bets episode for Tuesday later in the day. So be on the lookout for that. As well as Tuesday, make sure to tune in for Wuckets, WNBA pod, dropping on Tuesday as WNBA season gets ever closer to appearing with Maria Marino and Jim Turvey and the crew. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time. Till then, let's get buckets.